Hello, and welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center. For is it not written in Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war. We are made in his image. We talk about gunfighting, God at the center, and real-world first-hand experience. While you're listening, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. I should give a shout-out to Steve Clifford. You might remember him from the Scout Rifle episode. He is one of the patrons I'm blessed to have, and he sent me a message. One of the perks of being on patrons, they send me messages, and unless it's just a comment or something, if it's an actual question, I try to reply to those. He asked me about Pccs, pistol caliber carbines, and I was like, yeah, I can't believe I haven't done an episode on that yet. Again, one of the perks of being on Patreon, they can get a hold of me, and a lot of times they do influence the content and the shows, because I don't do this for me. I do this to pass the knowledge and opinions, perspectives I've been blessed with in life and real world firsthand experience, and pass those on to you guys. Again, one of the perks, if you want to check out more or think about becoming a patron, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a link on there if you want to see pictures and stuff like that. Again, goodshepherdtraining.com. With that, I'll plug in the bio. If you want to skip it, skip to around 3 minutes, 45 seconds after it starts. We'll get into the topic. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, he got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents he's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. with that, we will roll into the day's topic. Alright, gunfighters, let's talk about pistol caliber carbines. They've really come on hot in the last couple of years. I remember when I was shooting a lot of USPSA competitions and stuff, it may have been a division back then, I don't recall, but I don't remember ever anybody actually shooting it now. I believe it's one of the fastest growing divisions. Just a change in culture, a change in sport. And like I said, when Steve sent me that message, I can't believe that we hadn't talked about PCCs. I did a search on the web host that I use to put these podcasts out, and I put in PCC and nothing came up. So let's talk about it. So first I'm going to talk about a couple of different categories of PCC. You have your dedicated PCCs. Probably the most iconic of these is going to be your the full auto MP5s and things like them, and their full auto guys are obviously going to be submachine guns. I don't think the vast majority of the audience is going to have submachine guns, and I don't want you to feel left out by that. The vast majority, 90 plus something % of the time, in my experience, with a shoulder-fired weapon, you're better off shooting it in semi-auto. When I was a police officer, I was one of the range masters in charge of the armory and things like that. I had access to, could go in anytime I wanted and grab the old Thompsons, the Tommy guns. I could grab full auto M4s. I could grab a bunch of different submachine guns. And pretty quickly on those, the novelty wears off if you actually care about hitting your target. There are very few times when full auto is useful. That's why the military has it. Like, if most of your squad is wiped out and you happen to surprise an enemy squad and it's 2 of you against 12 of them in a trench that you just happen to come across over, then yeah, full auto would be important in that. But the vast majority of the time, at any kind of distance with a shoulder-fired firearm, you're better off in semi-auto. So don't feel like you're missing out a ton. But getting back to the dedicated pistol caliber carbines, like your MP5s, and a lot of companies made the MP5 clones other than HK, but you know what I'm talking about. That iconic kind of pistol caliber carbine. And the MP5 is great. It's a great weapon. I really enjoy them. You have your dedicated pistol caliber carbines. Well, that's probably one of your most popular ones. Another one that's come on strong in the last several years would be the CZ Scorpion. And then the other big one that I know of is going to be your SIG MPX. Now, I'm not going to get all wrapped around the axle on which one of those is better than the other and the merits of one versus another. But what I will say is there are some advantages. You get something built from the ground up to be a pistol caliber carbine. It's engineered for that cartridge, for that round, for that design, for that magazine. You're not trying to get something and make it work as a PCC. It was designed by, in all those cases, a very reputable manufacturer as a pistol caliber carbine. It was designed that way. It works that way. You don't have any extra room or extra space or things that are converted to work a different way. They were designed that way. And I like that. I'm just going to let you know, if I was going to go with a PCC right off the bat, I would go that way. Because it was designed by a reputable manufacturer, tested in that guise. You're not switching a bunch of parts around and building something from scratch. If I'm talking about not just something for fun to shoot, and they are a lot of fun to shoot, which is one of the reasons they've become so popular, rather than looking for a life-saving implement, that's the way that I would go. With a dedicated, built from the ground up, from a reputable manufacturer, pistol caliber carbine. And that's the big advantage to me in those. Our next big category that's come along recently is the AR conversions. Now, these are all over the place. There's, just like ARs, there's tons of different ways you can Barbieize them and accessorize them and do all kinds of different things from all kinds of different manufacturers on them. You can go with a full 16-inch barrel if you're doing like PCC in USPSA, or if you just want a really soft shooting fun gun, you can get like a full-length heavy 16-inch compensated PCC that just are fun and fast and accurate to shoot at reasonable ranges, 50 yards and in, 100 yards and in. They're fantastic for that. They're a lot of fun. Like I said, you can customize and tinker with them and play with them and tune them. They're great for that. You can build them way shorter and way smaller. You can get them down to like a 7-inch barrel. I'm sure you could probably even get them smaller, but like 7.75 is the shortest I'm aware of. And since you're already dealing with a pistol round, you're not losing, you're probably gaining velocity, because the vast majority even when we consider a big beefy handgun like a 1911, like a Beretta full size, talking about a 5-inch barrel. Well, you're getting another 2.5 inches even on a very short PCC. So you're getting better ballistics. When you, in general, make a barrel longer, especially at those lengths, you are getting better performance out of that round. I should caveat that you may not get better performance, you are getting more energy, more velocity out of a given round, out of a longer barrel in a PCC than you would out of a pistol. And the big advantage to those is you can just, if you know what you're doing and you're a decent gunsmith and you're decent with ARs, you're decent at building stuff, you can build what you want the way you want it. That's the big advantage to these, in my opinion, is that, if you get a SIG Scorpion, you get a SIG Scorpion. If you build one of these, granted, if you do it well and it's reliable, you can get what you want the way you want it with a super light free float tube. If you want it with a stainless barrel or a nitride barrel or just a manganese phosphate barrel, you want it with a whatever twist rate, you can really nerd out and get exactly what you want. The caveat on that is you have to test it and you have to make sure it's reliable because it wasn't tested by like a big manufacturer that's going to put a lot of money and time and ammo into testing. So they do have their advantages, and they can be a lot of fun. Less popular but worth mentioning are the AK conversions, and I have dealt with one of these recently. It was pretty cool. When an AK converted to a pistol caliber is pretty neat. That's a pretty neat thing. Not going to talk a lot about that. If you really love the AK and you're dedicated and married to the AK and you are familiar with its functionality and you respect it for what it is and that's your platform that you run and you want a PCC, obviously there's a lot of advantage in continuity of training there. So that's your big advantage with the AK 9mm conversions. I don't know that there's enough of them out there and they've had it long enough in the lineage to know if they have the same, probably have the same longevity because there's less pressure and less things, but I don't know if they have the reliability of a standard AK. They may. Like I said, I just don't know, and I don't know that I don't know they've been around long enough to prove that out. The big advantage there is if you run an AK, then you get the continuity of training. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of these conversions from the ARs and the AKs to pistol caliber. One of the big ones is they tend to be straight blowback. And although you would think a PCC with a pistol caliber would have less recoil than one in a 5.56, you may be surprised because that direct impingement gas delaying system that you have in an AR is kind of proven and tested and the weeds are worked out of it. You're getting or building an AR with a straight blowback system with a heavy buffer, with a heavy bolt, which is generally what you do, you may not be getting less recoil. So don't automatically think that you'll get less recoil. Because most of the time in those, what you're dealing with is a straight blowback. And that may result in more recoil. Think of if you're familiar with like a high point. Generally, in a handgun, if you make it bigger and heavier with the same caliber, you get less recoil. But if you've ever shot a high point compared to like a Glock, you'll know that it weighs way more and the recoil feels far worse because you're not getting that most common, Browning tilting barrel system that delays like some of the action. You're getting a straight blowback and it has quite a bit of recoil. That same principle applies with the converted PCCs. Just bear that in mind. I don't have any first-hand experience, but the principle seems sound with the CMMG, radial delayed blowback system. That seems like a better system than straight blowback, at least from the point of recoil, and it reduces a lot of the weight you need if you're going to do a straight blowback system. And I don't have any first-hand experience with them. If I was going to get into one, I'd probably look at, if I was going to build an AR conversion of a PCC, I would probably look at the CMMG radial delayed blowback system. Again, the concept seems to have merit. I don't own one, haven't shot one, haven't run one. But if you're not aware of those, they are different than just a straight AR blowback system that most of them use. Now let's talk about something pretty cool that's come along recently. This is actually what Steve was writing in about. And he was talking about the Rhony conversions, or similar conversions. Rhony is the big one. They may not have been the first one, but they were the first big one to market, kind of like Glock wasn't the first polymer pistol, but it was the first one to really grab onto the market and be successful. The Rhony conversions have kind of made a name for themselves. The Rhonys, the micro Rhonys, they're really something cool. They are known for taking a Glock pistol, which is the most common in my experience and what I've heard. They're the most common handgun by far as pistols are concerned. Taking your Glock, 1917, and making it into a pistol caliber carbine. Follow all your legal laws, of course. But they take a Glock pistol and make it into a PCC. And they did it pretty successfully. Take your Glock, you take the firing mechanism, for lack of a better term, lower, you shove it in these things. All the different parts, you assemble it, and ta-da, you got a PCC. You can mount a red dot on it. You can use the pistol brace, air quotes, to get a little bit more shootability, accuracy, what have you. Likewise, there's at least one company that makes P320 conversions. The P320 in the military designation, the M17 and M18, the new adoption of the U.S. military, they have been gaining quite a bit of steam, and no doubt they will continue to do so because anything adopted by the military seems to do well in the civilian market. They also make these conversions. And if you're not familiar with the 320, M17, M18, kind of the big claim to fame for them is their modularity. The fire control group lifts out of basically just a plastic shell in what we'll refer to as the lower of the grip module, and you pull out what's called the fire control unit. And everything, the trigger, the safety if it has one, the slide stop, all the functioning parts of that fire control unit are housed in this unit that stays together. And you pop that out, and you can, let's say you have bigger hands, you want a bigger grip, or you have smaller hands, you want a smaller grip, or you want a slightly longer grip to hold more rounds, or a slightly smaller grip to be more concealable. You can just shove it in there and do that. Well, why not take that grip module out, that trigger firing mechanism, fire control unit out, and shove it into another apparatus to make it a PCC? At least that's the thought behind it. So you don't have to buy another firearm, you don't have to do this or that thing. You don't have to go to the gun store and worry about people keeping your records and blah, blah, blah. You have the fire control unit. You pop it in here. It's a PCC. Again, with that pistol brace, it's still a pistol. And I've got to admit, that's pretty cool. The James Bond appeal of that, the cool Transformer appeal of that, it is pretty cool. I got to admit, it's pretty cool. Again, you have the pistol brace. You have the ability to put a rifle red dot optic on it. A sling, things like that, 30-round mags. And the appeal of these is that they're pretty tiny. A regular-sized JanSport backpack. I haven't tested this, but it looks to me like you could just put one in a regular-sized JanSport backpack. Gray Man concept, or a sling bag with a couple of 33-round stick mags. To me, that's the big appeal. I don't really care about much else. It's the fact that you get that and you can put it in something tiny and concealable like that. A laptop bag, probably even. So if you're going into an office environment where, let's face it, in today's day and age, active shooters are a thing. Nobody's going to bat an eye at you walking around with a laptop bag. It's a lot of firepower in a laptop bag. So pretty cool. Now that we've done a dive into the different kinds of PCCs, the categories of PCCs, I guess we should talk about why. Why a PCC? We can't discuss this without discussing the validity of, let's call them SBRs, or the pistol version of an SBR, a small AR in a rifle caliber. Because you can build these, and I wouldn't go any less than 10.5 inches, but you can build these with 10-inch barrels, 11-inch barrels, 7-inch barrels. And to me, that's the biggest argument against a PCC. You can put folding stocks on them now. You can do all kinds of stuff to make them super small and compact and super light. I'm blessed to carry one behind the seat of my Hummer. It stays back there. It stays in a scabbard in my grab-and-go bag. It's small, it's light, it's handy. And these exist. And they exist from reputable manufacturers that are already, like I said, proven and tested. Now, realize we talked about a longer barrel giving you better ballistics. A shorter barrel, you're going to lose ballistics. And a lot of the arguments, before I was doing the show, I was doing some research for you guys, looking up the merits of 5.56 out of a short barrel versus a 9mm out of a short barrel. And let's just say that would be an entire episode there, and probably too nerdy for a lot of people. Just realize if you're putting a 9mm in a longer barrel than a pistol, you're going to get more energy than it was designed for. And realize if you take something designed for a 20-inch or 16-inch barrel and cut it down to 10, 11, or 7 inches, you are losing energy. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean losing ballistic performance. One of the arguments that kind of upset me when I was researching it is people saying like, oh, the AR-556 has to be going at X velocity to fragment or tumble or things like that. Well, that's true, but if you're using it for defense and you're counting on it for that, why? If you're not in the military, why would you be running an FMJ bullet? A bullet that's designed to expand, get a soft-pointed bullet or a hollow-point bullet that will expand at said velocities, and they make those. So to me, that's an invalid argument. But what you're really talking about is that energy. Would you rather have a 5.56 out of a shorter barrel than it's used to, or would you rather have a 9mm, let's just say for the sake of this argument, 9mm, out of a slightly longer barrel? The problem there is, yes, you'll get more energy and more velocity, but those hollow points are velocity dependent. They're designed the vast majority of time for handguns to expand and penetrate properly at those velocities. If you increase the velocity, that hollow point's going to expand more. Every time the diameter of that bullet, just as far as physics go, expands, its ability to penetrate decreases. You could get into a situation where your ammo overexpands and underpenetrates with a PCC because it's going much faster. And then the remedy to that would be going to a full metal jacket like NATO round, which I think would be a poor ballistic choice in a 9mm, even out of a PCC. So you're going to have to reckon and be circumspect and check that out for yourself. Like, only you're going to know if you're going to run a 7.5 or an 11-inch barrel and what kind of ammo you like. But in any case, I wouldn't go with a full metal jacket. Argument about it not tumbling or fragmenting with FMJ ammo out of a short-barreled AR to me sounds like a moot point for civilians. And it's kind of a wash, actually, with 55 grain 5.56 or the like. You're not losing any weight really in ammo by switching to a 9mm. The bullets are heavier. That's where a lot of your weight is. So that's really talking about like ounces and arguing. So to me, that's not really a reason to consider one over the other. The big one, and this is a big one for me, is noise. If you've ever shot a short-barreled AR, especially inside, or been around somebody that shoots one inside, it's freaking loud. I mean, possibly going deaf in a round or two loud. It is super loud. You have a lot of unburnt powder, a lot of concussion, a lot. And you don't have that out of a PCC. That is a big advantage, especially if you're talking about something for personal protection. They might be shooting inside a vehicle, because don't think that can't happen with all the riots and things going on where people crowd your vehicle. So that is a big advantage in the PCC. Another big argument for the PCC would be ammo commonality, especially if you're doing something that, let's say, both run Beretta mags, or both run SIG mags, or the most ubiquitous, both run Glock mags. Like, you already carry a Glock for EDC. Your go-to concealed carry gun is already a Glock. You already have Glock mags, and your PCC also takes your Glock 19 mags, but you also have a couple of 33-round mags in there. That ammo commonality, I don't think it's a big deal, as big as people make it out to be, because in any kind of gunfight scenario I've ever been in, probably not going to have time to be swapping back and forth. Gunfights, in the real world, in my experience, are fast and dirty and over quick. And to think that you're going to go through all your rounds and your carry loadout and your CCW gun and then run to your car and grab more mags from your PCC and load it in your handgun or something like that, to me, is not an invalid point. It is an argument for the PCC, but I wouldn't ever make a choice for that reason. I just don't think the likelihood of that happening is very great. But, stockpiling the same kind of ammo, a bunch of the same kind of ammo, 9mm, it does have its advantages. And perhaps the biggest advantage is the size. Yes, you can get AR pistols very small. Like I said, I wouldn't personally go as far as dependability and how I understand the operating system. I wouldn't go below a 10.5 inch. And you can make those very small with folding stocks and stuff, but you're not going to make it as small as like a micro Rhony. So again, you can get something you can fit into a laptop bag that, yes, has more firepower than probably your standard Glock 19. especially for what I would consider your average shooter. So I would say, is it the right choice for you? Again, I don't know you. What are you going to do with it? I would say for me right now in my life, it's not the right choice for me. Like, carry a handgun generally all the time when I'm out of the house. If we're talking about a truck gun, like I said, I carry the little SBR AR behind the seat of the car and my, let's call it, I don't know, escape and evasion bag, bug out bag. And I generally carry a shotgun in the car. There is no scenario where I can envision if I'm going to my car and grabbing something, I'm going to want to grab a little micro Rhony or even a full-length AR conversion PCC over an actual AR or a shotgun. So for me, no. But let me talk to you about, if you listen to the bio, that I was the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area where our primary job was to stop active shooters. I pressed and pressed for a long time for us to get a rifle program for a lot of reasons. To stop active shooters, be able to take one precise shot. I'm talking about we've been used with thousands of people in very close proximity. Better to have one guy elevated with a rifle that can take one shot than a bunch of guys running around on the pistols and mass chaos. I had to argue that for a long time in a corporate people that didn't necessarily understand guns to get us to have a rifle program. And before I left, I was arguing for us to have a PCC program, pistol caliber carbine program. Why? It goes back to that size thing again. We carried ours, let's say, covert. It's not like people that didn't know guns didn't know what was in the bag, but the average tourist didn't know what was in. We had big, long backpacks on our backs that we carried. Like sometimes I would carry the Scar 17, sometimes I would carry a smaller AR. My men, the same thing. But those are big and heavy on a 12-hour shift walking around. I was pushing for them to be able to get a much smaller bag, like a sling bag or a very small backpack. Even a small thing that attached right behind their neck on their body armor that could carry a PCC, like one of those micro Rhony conversion kits. I was pressing for that before I left. It didn't happen, but that shows you that it does have merit. There is a time and a place for it. It gives you that extra firepower in a very small package. And if that applies to you, if you work somewhere where you're concerned about active shooters and you can have a laptop bag, maybe you want a little step up from a handgun. The capacity thing is not a big thing to me. I mean, yeah, my go-to handguns are generally like 21 round capacity. But that's because I shoot them well, not because of that. In most of your scenarios, you had better not be dumping 21 rounds and then changing mags and then dumping more ammo. So the capacity is not a big deal for me, but it does, for most people, give you better shootability, greater range, and more precise shots. And accuracy is never a bad thing. So does that apply to you? And I'm not talking about like PCCs for fun, because PCCs, hands down, are some of the most fun guns to shoot. Next to a 22, they're probably the most fun gun to shoot. Talking about real-world gunfighter application, this is gunfighter life after all. That would be the reason I would choose one of those kits, is that it's smaller. It gives me more firepower in a smaller package than I would be able to carry otherwise. The second I could step up to a shotgun or an AR, then I would do that. Since Steve Clifford asked me about this, he's a patron and he gets in touch with me one-on-one. He also mentioned something that I thought I would throw in, since this episode was kind of from him and for him. Not only for him, for everybody. But I thought I would throw in a tip that he gave. He says, tactical tip. Most new vehicles include a pre-collision system, and many include pedestrian detection to keep you from running into a human at an intersection. What if that pedestrian is holding a Molotov cocktail or a rifle? You might need to be able to drive forward, but if you have a pedestrian detection system, you can't. The vehicle will stop you. All vehicles have a bypass for this, but you need to know how to do it. Flipping through your owner's manual when a guy is lighting the gas-soaked rag is a good way to be a victim. Learn how to turn your vehicle off and practice. Learn how to turn your system off and practice turning it off once a month. Make sure you can do it quickly. Turning it off permanently is not an option, since most vehicles turn it back on every time you start it. I did not know that. I drive an 03 vehicle. My wife drives an '08. I didn't even know that existed, to be honest with you, but a very good tip. And since I know that Steve enjoys the tactical tips because he has written so, I'll throw in one so he gets one as well, and all the rest of you. And sometimes you do something for so long you forget that you even do it. Let's say that you're carrying concealed, which I hope that you are, carrying a pistol on your belt. Let's say you're carrying a cover garment, a light jacket, a heavy jacket, whatever that is. That pocket that you put your hands in, put a little bit of weight in that pocket. It can really help the consistency and speed at which you draw from concealment. And I got that from an old video, Blackhawks Tactical Tips with Todd Jarrett, a fantastic resource. I've been doing it so long I kind of forget. It's just a habit. Like I throw a dog biscuit or two in there. If I have something else to carry that has a little bit of weight to it, I'll throw it in that pocket. That way when I brush it back to grab my gun, it flies out of the way. Much more so than it would do without weight in the pocket. Or you could just throw a couple of quarters in there, tape them together so they don't rattle around, and put them in your pocket. It doesn't have to be a ton of weight, but enough weight to push that out of the way, and it really does help. If you've practiced drawing from concealment, you know that every once in a while, the garment can get in the way and get caught. Well, putting that weight in there can greatly reduce the chances and the propensity at which that happens. So putting a little bit of weight in that concealed carry pocket of your cover garment. Great tactical tip. As a thank you for listening to the end of the episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. If you want to contact me, check out some pictures. If you want to support this podcast financially, because they're free to listen to, but sadly they're not free to put out. If you want to support the tribe you're a part of, feel free to go to goodshepherdtraining.com. There's a Patreon link on there. There's also, if you don't want to just support on Patreon, you can buy merch. Just a way to fly the banner and support the podcast. There's Alpha Male mugs, metal mugs that say Alpha Male on there. If you're not familiar with the Alpha Male podcast, another podcast we do. There's also shooting shirts and another shirt on there if you want to support that way and get something out of it. But mostly just so you guys out there in the tribe can, fly the banner. And I might start throwing in every time, or maybe quite frequently, the tactical verse of the day. We already did Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war, or the Lord is a warrior, depending on which translation you like better. A classic from Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And not a verse, but a wise saying from Theodore Roosevelt that ties into today's episode. Walk softly and carry a big stick. With that, guys, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.